Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to do service. Thank you for asking me, Robbie. As usual, I have got absolutely no idea what's going to come out here because what I have to do now, down to the smallest detail of life, is rely on something that is greater than me, something that is going to guide me and put me in the right direction. This is the very opposite to how I lived my life before coming into AA and CA. The passage that we just read out is very much about denial. And I read a piece this week that said, we know we've changed when we can laugh at what used to make us angry. And my story is very comical to me now because I cannot believe how much I couldn't see about myself until someone held up a kind mirror and showed me what I really looked like. This was not an easy process, but when Robbie was talking about sponsorship and talking about sponsors being armed with the facts about themselves, when I used to hear that in the book, I thought, yeah, as I do with a lot of phrases from the book, I thought, yeah, it sounds great, but what does it mean? Well, now I know what it means. Those things that burned me up, those things that really hurt me to discover are now my strengths, because once I accept and take a 360 or a 180, should I say, about the situations that used to burn me up, when I look in my step 4 and my step 5, really at what is it that gets to me and what is it that I cannot let die down? When I look at my part in that, when I look at where I've been like with other people in the past, where I have let resentments take a hold of my life, when I look at what I have done rather than what other people are doing to me, I can really get free of the causes and conditions underlying my drinking and using. So I'm going to tell you tonight a little bit about how God has become, the central fact of my life. I am not afraid or embarrassed to talk about that. And I want to tell you that that's not how it's always been. I want to tell you that this book, which I call the Jumble Sale book, because it seemed to me when I first came in, a book that you would find in a jumble sale, something that people had got because they had to and then chucked it away. Not a book that people would read, for God's sake. This to me seemed like, and I only realized recently that because of my ego, because of my absolute arrogance, I thought this book couldn't help get me well because I'd never heard of it. That's the reason why. I hadn't heard of it, so how is this going to help me? And I want to talk to you today about how I have gone from 0% confidence in this book to 100%. If more than 100 was allowed, I would be there, because this has changed my life completely and now goes on to change other people's lives through me in sponsorship. I don't even know that my kids love me 100%. Do you know what I mean? I know this book has worked for me and has worked for many others and can work for anyone who goes through it with a sponsor who is armed with the facts about themselves. So if there are any newcomers here tonight, this kind of language that you hear in the big book, the promises, the kind of outlandish claims it makes. I got a text from a sponsor a couple of days ago that said, guess what? The 9-step promises have come true for me. I'm like, you and me both. This is real. It says in the big book that God is going to enter in your heart in a way that is truly miraculous. And miraculous to me means that it can't be explained. All I ever did was look for evidence, look for explanations. Now I start everything I do with a set-aside prayer, which asks God to set aside everything I think I know. Self-knowledge was the thing I sought. Now I trust in God to show me the way every day. It said in that reading, didn't it, that whatever we put first, so we do God's work, we help God's kids for fun and for free, for fun and for free. I never thought I would be saying that, because I only ever had something to do with something if it was going to pay me back. Even in friendship, I would give you the time of day as long as I could count on you to do that for me in future. This was hard to realize for me, but it set me free to know this about myself and to know that there's a different direction, following clear-cut direction. There's a different direction that is possible for me now. So in that passage, it said we do God's work, and what we put second will become first class. I'd been sold on a lot of the big book, but this seemed like upside down. You know, they talk about this work being a bridge to normal living. Okay, well, let's get the job, the house, you know, let's have the relationship with the kids back. Let's do all the stuff we wanted to do. Okay, well, first we got to do what it says to do in the book, and that is take our self-centeredness, put it to one side, and put others in front of us. Now, to us self-centered alcoholics and cocaine addicts, this just seems like a bridge too far. How on earth are we going to be able to do that? We didn't even know we were self-centered, and now you're telling us we've got to move out of the way and put others first? How is this going to happen? So I'm going to tell you a little bit how it happened for me, because just like you, newcomers or people who are early in, who are still, you know, wondering how on earth life is going to be worth living without the substance we used to change the way we felt. We really, really are desperately receptive to the hope that recovered alcoholics and cocaine addicts have got in spades. You know, it says in the book, we have a spiritual intoxication. I want to say, you know, not me, because I want to be cool, but guess what? Me too. Me too. And I can't wait to share it with people. I can't wait to give you a bit of what has been given to me for free. And it's available for anyone. And it was always there. We just had our ladder up against the wrong wall. So, yeah, I'll talk about the kind of family life I had, the way I was brought up. And the way I was brought up was to fend for myself. The way I was brought up was to, if I trusted in other people, then I was being weak. If I couldn't rely on myself, if I couldn't fight my way out of stuff, if I couldn't make things happen by the force of my will, then I was losing. And I didn't want to be on the losing side. I wanted to be on the winning side, always. I was so afraid, and in the book it tells us we are absolutely plagued by 100 forms of fear. Now, how could that be? How could that be when I was absolutely adamant? I was brought up to believe it, and I professed it all my adult life. I wasn't afraid of anything. How could it be that I've been plagued by 100 forms of fear if I couldn't even see it? Well, that's what this program does. It opens us up to see the causes and conditions of our problems. I would not show fear in anything. I was a big risk taker. I would take any drug. I would be the person who would be up longer than anyone else. I had no qualms about fighting to show you like who was boss. I did all the things that I'm sure many of the people in this room have done too. I wanted my way. I wanted my will done. I didn't see it like that then because I didn't have the language that this book has given me access to. But all I knew was you weren't getting one over on me, and I was gonna get to you before you got to me. That was the way I lived. That was the way I was bringing my kids up. I did not know any other way. I had a lot of alcoholics in my family. My oldest brother, who was my hero, an alcoholic. All of my siblings alcoholics, except for, of course, I can't diagnose. But my oldest one was really very much my hero. Had a lot of bad luck, a lot of terrible accidents, which led him to be even more reliant on drink than he would have been anyway. I tell you about him because he's been a big part of my story, and he kind of is intertwined with the reading we've just had from Crossing the River of Denial, where the woman said that as soon as she got into recovery, she got ill health, she was brokenhearted, she lost the house. Well, when I came into recovery, within a few weeks of being in the rooms, I lost my brother to alcoholism. My nephew was virtually taken from his funeral to rehab and onto other recovery. And my daughter was diagnosed with a untreatable condition. So I always see it as like God giving me a bit of grist for the mill. What am I going to do with life when I can't change the way I feel? And God goes, well, let's have a look, shall we? But I'll go back a little bit to about when I came into the rooms, and again about denial, because I came into the rooms absolutely no idea how. I got to tell you, I'd been in much worse situations in my life. I'd been, I drank far more. I'd used far more drugs. I wasn't at a period of my life where the drinking was very, very prominent. But what I was in a stage of life, which was really very difficult for me, I was in a stage of life where my emotional disturbances were so huge that I could barely live with myself. I've found being with myself unbearable. And when the booze and drugs stopped working to make me bearable to myself, I found myself stuck in a corner. I was so arrogant and unique, like the woman in the passage we just read. I was so arrogant and unique when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and CA that I sat there thinking, I'll just listen to you people. I'll just listen to you people for a bit, and then I'll find out what I can do to straighten myself out, and I'll be on my merry way. Thank you. And I used to think, look at these people, look at them. And their stories were very different to mine, often very different to mine. There'd been people who'd lost their children, lost their house. And of course, I started looking for a nice, easier, softer way. I'm starting to think, wow, maybe I haven't got a problem after all. I forgot that, for the last 5 or 10 years even, I'd been up every night with the Four Horsemen, wanting to spring from the bed like Bill Wilson and through the window, sash and all. No matter that this happened every night, I still found it acceptable to carry on drinking. I still found it, when the time came round that evening, it was something that I was going to do again. And even then, I was still under the illusion that I had a choice. When I was drinking against my own will, I was still under that very, very powerful delusion. So I got into the rooms. I listened. I went to one meeting a week. I didn't feel the need to go into. I graced the people of Women Living Sober with my presence. That's the way I felt. I felt like they could learn a thing or two from me, because I'd been, I'd been to university. I'd got a PhD in addiction neuroscience. I was going to tell them a thing or two. I was going to, help them out with the evidence. I'm serious about this as well. I am amazed at my own arrogance, and of course laugh my head off about it now, because what had that done for me? Had it kept me sober? Had it stopped me from drinking against my own will? No, it hadn't. I also had a lovely relationship with God. I'd been on a Sufi path. I'd done this and that. And I was going to introduce a few different ideas from different religions to my new group, but they kept bringing it back to the Jumble Sale book. I'm like, mate, what? Why are you so bothered about this book? What's it got in there? Little did I know they had every single thing that I needed, and not just to get rid of alcohol, for the rest of my life, for the rest of my life, because once I stopped drinking alcohol, I was left with my will that needed to be done. And I don't know if there's anyone old enough in this group tonight, but when we were little, you used to have these little like black discs, which were like fireworks. You set them on fire, and they grew and grew and grew. They were called magic snakes or something. That's what my will were like. It was never ending. Until I got my way, I could not stop my will from flaring. My anger was the thing that brought me into AA. I was 99% angry about 98% of things. I was literally, it was unbearable to be me. So here I was, newly sober, not drinking, feeling better, looking better, sleeping better, all that. And I thought, you know what? I think I've got this cracked, really. And I'd been listening to people, and it was very interesting. And I found that I couldn't drag myself away and take what I'd learned and just go off and do my own thing, because something was hitting home. Something was getting to me here. All I'd ever done is live my life through this. What I knew, what I could tell you about what I knew, how I could tell you how to go on. That was my life, was lived on that plane. But something in these meetings were getting me here, in my heart. And I had to go back. I was fascinated by these weirdos who was happy. I was so fascinated by them. And I've got a little bit from the book here, a tiny bit, which is the part where the bottom dropped out of my world when I heard this in a meeting. I'd been going for weeks. I heard this part, and it said, "We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life with or without alcohol. Some day he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end." And I remember that moment in the meeting, it felt like the gates of hell had clanged. I literally thought, oh my God, if it's up to me, even though I feel better and I'm telling myself everything's great, I'm gonna drink again. No matter what, I'm gonna drink again. And this, to someone who had been in denial their whole life, living a lie, living the double life that the alcoholic leads always, I was going to drink again. And that was a moment when I knew it, and the back door closed. The back door in my mind that I could have another go at it, give the ball another kick, clanged shut. And that was my bottom. That was the day when I knew there was one way. And it says in the book, grabbing onto the life preserver like a drowning man would. That was my moment. And on that very day, the happiest, clappiest person in the room said to me, "So are you ready to have a sponsor?" Because I'd turned many people down because I didn't need that, you see. I didn't need that. I was different. And I looked at her and I thought, oh my God, not you. Please, not you. And, we've just been away for a CA retreat in Malvern together. And I have got, the most beautiful relationship with this woman that I've ever had with anyone, because what happens in sponsorship is you give without expecting anything in return. You don't expect anything in return. And what happens when we do that, which I didn't know because I knew nothing about love, is real love is possible. That's definitely something I didn't know about myself when I came into these rooms, that I didn't know how to be loved and I didn't know how to love. Luckily, that is changing for me every day. But let's go back to coming into the rooms and what happened to me when I accepted that was it for me and alcohol, and that the only thing possible was a spiritual solution, and I were going to have to grab for that with everything I'd got. Which I wasn't interested in doing. I did not want to do that. And like I say, as I came in, shit started to hit the fan, you know? Things started to happen that were not nice things. And yet, God showed me that by doing what I didn't even believe in, by going through these steps, which I didn't believe in, and I am living proof that you don't have to believe in any of this stuff for it to work. All you have to do is put in the action. Don't be asking questions. Don't be picking things to pieces. Don't look for intellectual evidence. Do what you're told. You go forward, you work through the program, you learn backward. Every time I got to a new step, I'd be like, yeah, well, the last one I saw this amazing stuff happen to me, but this one is not going to work. And so we are as alcoholics who will not trust. I say to sponsees, how do I know you're trusting this program? You're doing what you're told. Simple as that. Simple as that. And that's what has got me well and more than well. So, for instance, when my nephew had gone into a detox, and my brother was ringing me up, my sister-in-law was ringing me up, I was trying to get in touch with the detox. He'd had a seizure, he'd bitten through his tongue, he was going to be sent during COVID to a hospital on his own. He didn't know what was happening. He was trying to get a taxi. My brother was screaming at me. My sister-in-law was screaming at me. And normally what happens to the alcoholic with emotional disturbances such as mine, I go off my nut. I cannot cope with these kind of terribly stressful situations. And I remember I'd only just started doing the work, but I remember thinking, oh, okay, I don't have to go mad. Here I am feeling like a wide base mountain. Here I am feeling like I can help someone in a bad situation. Instead of taking, I can give. And if you can believe that a person who is 53 can get to that stage of life without knowing, without understanding that it is fear that leads us to try to snatch everything we can out of a situation. It's not badness. It's not because we're garbage human beings. It's because we've learned patterns of behavior that have kept us alive. And there are alternatives, this work shows us. And it's been my absolute privilege to learn this stuff about myself, because it means I can turn towards the opposite of these things as I go through my steps. So that was one example of a time where I realized some tiny changes were taking place. I have had so many moments that with God, who has a great sense of humor, has showed me stuff that, as I say, because it's miraculous, it's almost impossible to explain to others. But it's a series of incontrovertible truths that have been revealed to me about my relationship with God that absolutely nobody can take away from me, ever. And this is why I am 100% sure that this stuff works. And this stuff works because of me working at my conscious contact with God, my relationship with God. Now, when it comes to things like meditation, like some of you will not be at this step yet, like step 11. But when it comes to getting a relationship with God, comes to getting conscious contact with God, what does it mean? How do we do it? Well, what I do is I sit and I set a timer, and I sit still until that timer's done. I sit and I get loved. That's it. That's as simple as it can be. And through doing that, through setting aside that time, things change. Now, all you've got is my word for it, and the word of millions of others who have recovered in this way too. And little by little, if you practice, you will see the benefits in your own lives. Another little example that I want to give to you, because I know that you will understand me, all of you in this room, from people who are just in to people who have been, are recovered alcoholics and cocaine users. And that is very early on, when I just started the work, people... I went into a pub. People said, don't go in pubs, don't do this and that. I went into a pub for something to eat. And my partner of many, many decades said to me, so do you think you really were an alcoholic? And I thought, oh my God, why has he said that to me? Why on earth have you said that to me? I'm going to go, the bar's there, I'm going to go now, I'm definitely going to go. And then something was in between me, what I normally do, and what was available to me now. I always say it was like somebody had put a swimming float in between that electrical current where it used to start, where I'd go, right, I'm going to do it, and then I'd be doing it. Something had come between that, and that had never, ever happened to me before. And like I said, this is not top of the mountain stuff. This is very mundane, very boring, but it means something to me. It was something different to what had happened before. And whatever had I been doing apart from this work? Nothing. I'd tried every single thing known to humanity before I came into these rooms. Here was a jumble sale book, me going through it with someone who was very happy. Here are the changes. I hope you understand how important that was to me. I went on holiday very early in. I really, honest to God, thought, what is the point of being alive without drink? Never mind going on a holiday. Like, why am I really going on holiday? Okay, well, I'll do it. And I went, and I would say that this was my first spiritual experience, was finding some grapefruit soda in Greece that tasted really nice. I'd never sucked pop in my life. Why would I when there were booze available? I used to drink it by the pool and think, oh, okay, this is what people do. This is relaxing. I weren't trying to get myself up so that I could cope with kids, down so that I could go to sleep. I wasn't trying to alter the way I felt constantly. I wasn't exhausted by all that. I was able to be, and I'd never been. I was like a fly in a glass. Excuse me. I was never satisfied. I was never like still or able to cope with irritations of people breathing, eating, having a different opinion to me. I wasn't able to cope with that. I wanted to abscond myself because I could not, even in my own family, I found it difficult to be in a room. And before I came into these rooms, I remember thinking, I just want to disappear. I want to just recede into the wall and have no influence over anyone. That's how unbearable my life and I had become. So I remember last year when my daughter had a massive operation, and one of the options was that she might not ever walk again, and the other option was that she would be fine. And I remember being on my knees the night after her operation, not knowing yet which it might be. And I remember having a little epiphany, which was the first time I'd ever been able to let go and put my hands out with equal weightings of those things in it. Maybe this will happen, maybe this will happen. I'm giving that to you, God. I'm giving that all over to you. And when that happened, I felt, I can't explain it properly, but a new horizon opened up for me. A completely new horizon opened up for me with that level of acceptance. And don't forget, you don't have to like what's happening to accept. You've just got to know that there is a larger pattern, a bigger unfolding, a bigger puzzle. God's got a plan. All you've got to do is put your little puzzle bit where it should be. How do I know where it should be? I've got clear-cut directions. What are clear-cut directions? Usually the opposite of what you want to do. Because God's will and getting on God's rails is so smooth, so easy. When my will comes into it, I'm in pain because I'm thinking all the time, what should be happening? What are my rights? What am I getting out of this? When I start doing that, I'm in pain. I'm in pain. And I can't live drug-free in that kind of pain. When it says in the book, the grouch and the brainstorm are not for me, it means it. I can't even have the face on. I can't even start manipulating my family by not talking to them. I can't do any of those things anymore. The brainstorm. I can't start thinking what you think of me. Like Mags D says, what I think you think of me will kill me. Now, that was in absolute opposition to what I was telling myself about me, that I was not afraid of anyone. I couldn't give two F's what anybody thinks about me. This is the thing. These are the stories I told myself, and the stories I told myself were my prison. Now I've got down to what I really am, and what I really am is absolutely full of potential. Same as every single person on this meeting tonight. Full of potential to do esteemable things. When I do esteemable things, I get self-esteem. I don't have to rely on that crazy massive ego that weren't real and that took some right puffing up all the time. I don't have to rely on that. I can get that down. I can get the words down and the deeds up. I heard this weekend, which I really liked, because I could talk a fantastic life. I could tell you how to go on non-stop. When I was doing my step 6 and 7, I took Drop the Rock, a book that goes into step 6 and 7 in detail. And step 6 and 7 is where we start looking at our character defects and the kind of patterns of behavior that we want to turn away from to their opposites. And it gave an exercise of, try not to tell anyone what to do today. Look at your own self. Try not to tell anyone else how to go on. And I literally didn't speak all day. So used was I to looking outside myself, to looking what you were doing wrong, so I didn't have to look at what I'm doing wrong. The most marvelous thing is about this program, to me, is that I never, ever have to stop growing. This is just the beginning for me, and to have sponsees calling up and for me to be able to point exactly in the book where I was helped with that problem. And if I don't know how to do what I'm supposed to do, I ring up a fellow, I ring up my sponsor. I'm in constant, as my great fellow says to me, I'm touch tight with my fellowship. That it became the bright spot of my life is as much a surprise to me as to anyone. But I feel absolute and utter love for my fellows. And I have no shame in saying that. People come in who are brand new, they're like long lost friends to me, because I know for a fact that I have got something to give them. I've got something to give them, and I cannot wait to do it. I don't know how long I've gone on, but I was just going to finish with my favourite part of the book, which is what this program is all about. And it's something that I really was not interested in. When it came to time for me to sponsor, I just thought, oh, this is brilliant, and everything's happened that like I wanted it to, and all the promises are real. But what? I've got a very busy life, I've got children and I've got a career, and I've got to really take care of that. And I meant it too. But what I didn't understand was that it means it when it says that you put God first, everything else is going to come into line. But I struggled. I fought. And I remember at the time when I was supposed to start sponsoring, I had a bit of a meltdown, and I started tussling with my little lass about her phone. And I hadn't done anything like that for a while. And I got the phone and I come into this bedroom where I'm sat now, and I thought, right, I'm going to chuck this at wall. I'm smashing this up, because I'd got right mad, which, we don't do that. We can't do that. We mustn't be mad at anyone or anything anymore. But I were at that point, weren't I, crossing over, and I chucked the phone and I smashed the phone. Next day, I were in shop saying, oh, can you mend my phone, please? Me. But at that moment, I had a choice. I didn't used to have a choice. I would have just chucked that phone no matter what. I'd got a choice this time, and I chose the wrong thing. And I had an emotional hangover like I've never had before. I didn't talk the whole next day. But what it showed me were, I were trying to hold on to old ideas. I were trying to hold on to the idea that I didn't have to pay it forward. I were trying to hold on to like an easier, softer way. And when I went all in, I got all out. When I started sponsoring and didn't say no to people, I didn't let my life become overwhelmed. But I have had a number of sponsees up to now, some successes, some failures, got nothing to do with me. When I understood that it wasn't me, the savior of the world, who was going to stop people from drinking or make them drink, that it was part of my journey and my recovery to do this no matter what, that I started to get stuff out of this program that is just, feasting at the table, not waiting for crumbs to drop. My life is full of hope, faith, courage, and it's got nothing to do with me apart from the little bits of action I put in this program. The rest comes from other sources. So I'm going to end on this little bit which speaks to that. It's one of my favourite parts of the book. In fact, it might be my favourite. And it is this. Like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn in over the last ounce of food, our pick struck gold. Joy at our release from a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. Father feels he has struck something better than gold. For a time he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. He may not see at once that he has barely scratched a limitless load, which will pay dividends only if he minds it for the rest of his life and insists on giving away the entire product. So thank you very much for asking me tonight.
Thank you, Rachel, for coming and sharing.